Environmental assessment for paraplegic, home and physical barrier assessment. The home assessment was performed over paraplegic Taylor's home. Taylor's home consists of 3 floors: basement, main floor, and upstairs. There are 4 bedrooms and 3 bathrooms in this home. Patient Taylor's Craig bedroom is on the 3rd floor of the house. 2 out of 3 bathrooms are on the 3rd floor, and the other is in the basement. In the basement, there is also a washer and a dryer. She uses all floors, but remains mostly on the main and the 3rd floor. Taylor is very concerned about getting herself to the bedroom, bathroom, and kitchen. She does not want to bother family members because they are all too busy with their own lives. When speaking with Taylor, we came to the conclusion that the front entrance is not a viable option. It's not often used by family members, and there is no path leading to the door, just grass. There is also holes in the grass due to the dogs. There are 11 brick stairs leading up to the front entrance with a railing on both sides. There is no room to put a ramp. The back entrance is the entrance used by family. Leading to the back entrance from the car lot is a concrete ground. Once you get to the entrance, there are 3 concrete stairs totaling a height of 21 inches with a width of 46 inches. There is no railing on either side of these stairs. The door is 80 inches tall with a width of 32 inches. You are able to fit a wheelchair through this door. Due to the stairs, the patient is unable to lock, unlock, open, or close this door from the outside of the house. They are only able to do so once inside the house.
After addressing the entrance of the house, the living room area is the next place that you're going to enter. Light switches are accessible in all areas of the main floor. Inside the living room, the windows are not accessible for a wheelchair user because they are too high, but also they're old style, so they have a clip on each side of it to be able to push in and try to push up. This is too difficult for a wheelchair user because you have to have a certain placement on the window in order to be able to hit the certain height. You will be too short unless you are over 6 feet and have a long torso in this chair. The furniture layout is an open space so that a wheelchair user can walk around and be accessible from any angle. There is a coffee table within the middle of the room, but it can be removed. There is a chair in the left-hand corner that is not used. It is only for staging. There are 2 sofas, and they are accessible for a wheelchair user to be able to transfer easily. The television is accessible because there's nothing in front of it and the buttons are on the bottom part of the television. After exiting the living room, the client would be entering the kitchen. To enter the kitchen, you do have to go over a step, so the client would need a ramp in order to enter the kitchen on this main floor. The kitchen has 2 French doors that are easily accessible to open, very wide opening. You would have to move around the kitchen table that is centered in the middle of the room, which could make it slightly difficult, but is easily accommodated. There is a refrigerator on the right-hand side of the room. This is accessible for the user, although the top shelf in the refrigerator would be difficult to use if the person does not have a long torso, and this client in this case does not, so she would not be able to use the top shelf of the refrigerator. The bottom part of the refrigerator is a freezer with a pull-out drawer. This is accessible for the client, although it could make it difficult to open if they are not at the right angle, so they would need to be beside the refrigerator to get into the freezer and grab what they needed to do. To the left-hand side, there is a stove and microwave. The microwave is not accessible for a wheelchair user due to it being too high above the stove. The buttons are not reachable for this client, and the stove is gas powered, so the client would not be able to click the buttons in order to use the oven, but the stove top they would be able to use because the knobs are easily accessible right there in front of them. The client can open the oven, but it is difficult to place objects into it due to only being able to be in front of it because it is too much of a narrow space to be on either side of the oven whenever the door is open. Next, on the left hand side, there is a sink. The sink is not accessible for the client. The client cannot reach for the faucet. They cannot reach deep down into the sink to be able to place objects in because the sink is so deep. The client will also have difficulty with the cabinet spacing around the room on the top hand side of the picture. There is multiple cabinets that the client cannot reach to assess what they need to get out of. This could easily be accommodated by placing all the objects that the client regularly uses on the bottom half of the cabinets. There are plenty of space and optimal storage. There is a pantry in the left bottom hand corner of the picture. The pantry is on the top and bottom of the cabinet, so this would be easily accommodated to put all the food on the bottom pantry cabinet for the client. But in this case, if the client wanted to reach anything from the top pantry cabinet, they could open the door but could not reach to grab what they needed out of it. To exit out of this room, you would go into the foyer part of the house. This is an easily accessible room with open space. There's only one chair in there and a desk towards the left-hand side of the room. This room is not used for anything and is usually mainly storage, or a hospital bed, if needed, would be placed in that room because this is the most accessible floor in the house due to it being a tri-level house. On the right-hand side of the room, you will see that there are stairs that you would have to use to either go up or go down to the basement. All bedrooms are on the top hand floor while the basement is at the bottom, and that is where the washer and dryer will be located. To reach the top floor, which is the second level of the house, per se by the owner, the bathroom is at the right hand side of the hallway once exiting the stairs. To enter the bathroom, there is one door. Inside, to the right hand corner, the wheelchair would need to be able to turn directly right and back up to get to the toilet or the bathtub. This would be very difficult for a beginner wheelchair user. I would suggest having somebody push them in to turn them because it might be a little bit easier to see how narrow the area is. But this is a very difficult space for the caregiver or the wheelchair user. The light switches are accessible for the client. Whenever they pull up directly to the sink when entering the bathroom, the sink is accessible to them, but it is difficult in order to reach the faucets, but it is able to happen. The reason why it's difficult is because there's no space under the countertop for the client's needs to go under, so they are pushed back due to this. If they wanted to pull to the right hand side, like I stated before, and have to turn their body to rotate their trunk to turn their body to the left in order to wash their hands or face, that would be easier for the client, but this is not the best suggestion. I do believe the bathroom would need to be renovated, but this will be discussed later on in the cost estimates of how much it would be to be able to renovate this bathroom. Next, we're going to talk about the toilet and sink, toilet and tub. I know that I addressed before that the client would need to back up into it in order to get to the tub because the door does block this area whenever it's open, so the door would have to be closed. Backing up would be the only way to get to the toilet, but it's very difficult. The client would have to be a very small person in order to make a easier wheelchair transfer to the toilet. Now the tub is very difficult to enter backwards because there is no space to turn around. So the tub is not accessible through that way. The client would actually have to back up into the bathroom to the right hand side and then pull themselves forward after the door is closed in order to get to the tub. Now, this does make a transfer difficult because it is a humongous safety violation because the wheelchair is not to the side. You would have to have a removable armrest. There would have to be a lot of accommodations because the tub is a step-in. It is not a walk-in shower. The bathroom has just normal painting on the plaster walls. Towards the tub area, there is tile inside the shower, but around the toilet and the rest of the tub area, there's actually wood that is painted. There are no grab bars for a client, which would need to be suggested to be put in. There's also nothing in the tub that prevents from slippage, so that would be suggested. There used to actually be a shower door that was a sliding door. This has been removed previous to these pictures being taken due to it not being very accessible even for an independent person who can step into the tub. So the mirror is a circle mirror. This made it extremely difficult for this client to be able to do their makeup or watch themselves brush their teeth or brush their hair or etc. due to the mirror being too high and the client being too short. I do believe even if the client were to have had a longer torso, it still would have made it extremely difficult, and they probably would have only been able to see from their nose to the top of their forehead, unfortunately. The outlets in the bathroom are accessible for the wheelchair client. There is outlets right beside on the left hand side of the sink, and there is one outlet that are under the shelves in the bathroom on the right hand side. These shelves are all accessible except for the very top one. There are 3 layers of shelves in this bathroom. For the home assessment in the bedroom on the 2nd floor, the bedroom was on the left-hand side of the stairs. It is accessible to enter. There is a light switch directly on the left-hand side when you enter the door. The light switch is accessible by a wheelchair user, and the wheelchair can maneuver in the room without it being without having accommodations. The bed is pretty low to the ground, so the wheelchair user is actually having a better position to be able to do their transfers. There was no difficulty with this, and the sliding board would make it easier if somebody was having difficulty, but because of the height of the bed, it does provide a lot of support for the wheelchair user to be able to use. The bed is not on wheels. It is stable. There's only a headboard and a very low footboard that does not create any problems for the client because the footboard is actually the same height as the mattress. So the client could actually use it to be able to prop themselves and slide themselves on the bed if they wanted to from that angle, or if they needed to sit and try to put on shoes at the edge of the bed, they could do this from there too. So the footboard is a very good part of the bed for a client in this condition. Both sides of the bed are accessible for the client. On the left hand side of the bed, there is a wheelchair that is readily accessible for this client, and they can reach their cell phone, telephone, cutting on the lamp, opening the drawers, and etc. from this angle. The drawers cannot open directly all the way due to the bed, and the client wouldn't be able to be directly in front of the nightstand due to its angling being towards the bed, but it is accessible and they can grab anything that they needed to be able to grab in that time period. The clothing in the room is accessible to the wheelchair user because it's in the dresser, which is easily able to be pulled out. There is space between the bed and the dresser for the wheelchair user. The drawers may not be able to be pulled all the way out depending on the angle that the wheelchair user is at. They will have to be angled to the side of the dresser, meaning that they are directly in front of it, but their wheelchair is turned to the side. So the wheelchair user would need to have full trunk rotation and able to be able to turn and grab what they were needing. From the top of the dresser all the way to the bottom of it, everything is accessible. The rest of the clothing that is not in the dresser is hung up in the bedroom in the closet. There's no light switch in the closet, so it is slightly dim in there, but everything is accessible except for the very top shelf in the closet. Anything that is on this shelf would not be able to be accessed by the wheelchair user. The wheelchair user may have some difficulty with certain clothing, pulling it off of the hangers, but they should be able to do so. Opening the doors for the closet should not be difficult for the wheelchair user. They are sliding doors. The wheelchair user would only need to be positioned only maybe about 2 inches away from the closet door in order to open both of them, to be able to push themselves forward a little bit to enter it. There are shoes at the bottom of the closet that could be moved for the wheelchair user if they were needed to get right underneath the clothing in order to grab it better. This was not the case for Taylor Craig, who was the wheelchair user in this scenario. She found no difficulty in it, but could see that there could be certain problems if the shoes, if there were too many coming out of the closet, or if they needed to grab something, were just having difficulty in general and needed to get closer in order to grab it better. The home assessment remodeling cost of the bathroom. According to the ADA guidelines, the bathroom is the most commonly remodeled room to accommodate a disability and has an average cost of $9,000. This typically includes installing a roll-in shower, which is $5,000 to $6,000, installing a vanity cabinet with sink or a wall-hung sink countertop, which is $1,500, purchasing an appropriate wheelchair height toilet. The toilet should be typically 19 inches from the floor to the top of the rim. The starting price is $200 and up. Installing grab bars near the tub, toilet, and shower will help to prevent falls and make the transfers easier for the user. And for 3 grab bars, it's typically $140. Continuing with the home assessment, the estimated cost elsewhere for everything is going to vary. Typical costs for modeling a kitchen will range $15,000 to $20,000. Lowering the kitchen cabinets and appliances to make them easier to reach would be around $15,000. Installing a kitchen counter at varying heights makes the access easier for those with mobility issues or wheelchair users. This would typically range around $500 to $1,500. Purchasing a portable interior or exterior ramp is around $100 to $400. Installing a permanent interior or exterior ramp is $400 to $4,000. Installing a chairlift is $3,000 to $4,000. Winding doorways or hallways is $700.
Leveling the yard or walkway is $500 to $1,000. A walkway or roll-in closet is $75 to $600. Other accommodations include ensuring all countertops and furnishings have rounded edges to prevent injuries, as well as making sure that wall switches, outlets, and other items are installed at around 30 inches in height to make them accessible. The prices will vary for all this. You do need to take into account that you will be paying an electrician depending on what you're needing. You will be paying for a plumber, or you could be paying for a carpenter or even someone else depending on what you're needing exactly. But you would have to pay per hour for these different professions.
For our physical barrier assessment, we went to Journeys, which is a shoe store located at the shops at River Crossing. So for parking outside of Journeys, there is one handicap spot, and it does have correct signage in front of the parking spot as well as on the road with the blue lines and blue sign. The parking spot is 7 feet wide with an access aisle of 7 feet wide as well. The ADA states that there needs to be at least an 8-foot wide space and an 8-foot wide access aisle. So this may be a little difficult for van accessibilities. As you can see, there's also a curb cutout. It leads directly from the access aisle onto the sidewalk. There is no raised marker pad on top of the access aisle curb cutout, so that could be a recommendation to add for those with visual issues. There is one entrance to Journeys where both customers and employee take to enter into the store. The handles on the door you are able to pull from the outside and push from the inside, so a person with a closed fist would be able to enter. There are 2 doors leading into the entrance. Each door is 36 inches wide and 94.5 inches tall. The ADA requires at least 32-inch clear opening, so the entrance into Journeys follows their guidelines. The picture on the top right is the entryway as soon as you open the door to enter the store. There is a display table right in front of the door that leaves a 42-inch of space after you enter the store. A suggestion would be to move the display table farther back a little bit in order to allow more room for the wheelchair user to turn into the store. The bottom right picture is a picture of the counter where you check out. The counter is 34 inches tall and 60 inches long, so the wheelchair user would be able to reach on top of the counter to lay their items down and pay. Journeys did not have a restroom for public use, so we drove over to the public restroom connected to the same shops as Journeys. The parking spot outside of the public restrooms does have the correct signage in front of and on the parking spot. There is an access aisle that is 7 feet wide, but there is no curb cutout. The access aisle extends, as you can see in the right picture, into a walkway that is 5 foot wide. As there is no curb cutout, this walkway goes directly onto the same speed bump as the cars do passing by on the road. For safety issues, we suggest adding a curb cutout directly onto the sidewalk in order to prevent any type of injuries from happening. To enter the public building where the bathrooms are located, there is one door to enter into the women's restroom. The door is 36 inches wide and 94.5 inches tall. It is a door where you can pull from the outside and push from the inside, so a person using a closed fist would be able to access the building. As soon as you enter into the building and take a right, there is a hallway leading into the women's bathroom.
The hallway width is 44 inches, so a person using a wheelchair would easily be able to access into the bathroom. The picture on the right shows the sign of the handicap restroom. It's also the same restroom door as the family restroom, so it is equipped for both families and handicap users. The door itself is 37 inches wide and 8 feet tall. The handle is one that you can use with a closed fist and lock with your knuckle. The size of the bathroom is 12 feet long entering in from the door, and then 6.5 feet wide from wall to wall, from behind the toilet to the wall in front of the toilet. So as you can see, there are 2 toilets in this bathroom, one child toilet and one adult toilet. The measurement from between each toilet is 23 inches away from each other, so it may be difficult for a wheelchair user to exactly squeeze in between right beside the toilet for transfers. The person in the wheelchair may have to be catty-cornered in order to successfully and safely transfer onto the toilet. So the adult toilet is 17 inches high and 15.5 inches wide. It is 9 inches away from the wall beside it, where you see there is a toilet paper dispenser, and there are bars attached to the wall for extra safety precautions that they can use. The bottom right picture is a picture of the sink. It is 34 inches tall and 40 inches wide, and there is a space for a wheelchair user to be able to pull up to the sink and not have any issues with hitting their knees. So from the edge of the sink to the beginning of the faucet, it is 19 inches long. The wheelchair users would successfully be able to wash their hands, as the faucet is an automatic motion sensor, and the soap dispenser is used to push the soap out. So a person with a closed fist would be able to wash their hands. So here we have listed costs for recommendations that we best think would be fit for Journeys as well as the public restrooms. So referencing back to Journeys, they did have a curb cutout connected to the access aisle, but it did not have the raised marker pad on it. So to install one of these, the pad would be $100 and then the additional charge for their services. Also, going into both Journeys and the bathroom, we did find that the doors were somewhat heavy to open. So to add an automatic door, it would be $2,130 a door. So in order to have an automatic door for both Journeys and the bathroom, it would be around $4,260. If this is not cost efficient for the shops at River Crossing, there could also be a recommendation to add lighter weight doors. These doors would be $1,300 a piece. So referencing back to the bathroom parking situation, with the access aisle leading to a walkway that has the same speed bump as cars do, we wanted to add in a curb cut straight onto the sidewalk. So to add a curb cut, it would be around $550, and then that additional $100 for the raised marker pad that goes on top.